already. Wow, it's amazing how time flies when you have 2 or 3 minutes left. I quickly sat down to write my to-do list, and all of a sudden, it was almost 8:02. Unbelievable how quickly that happens. So, yes, I managed to get some of my to-do list done of the things that I just thought of that I needed to add to the list that I already made last night. But now it's time for some reading. But since most of you don't speak Chinese, we're not going to be reading Rich Dad Poor Dad in Chinese. We are going to be reading and continuing on with The Art of Thinking Clearly by Ralph Dobelli, which is very interesting little short stories, little anecdotes, some of them of which I agree with, and some of them I agree with a little bit less. I hope that you're all enjoying this. There's a couple of people sending me all sorts of interesting things on Bigo Live, where we are as well as live on Zoom and on YouTube if you're watching the replay. So it's good to see you all. And even though it was light before, it's a little bit dark now. So let's add a little bit more light for natural light, but time for a little bit of artificial light to make sure that it's a little bit easier to see me. Okay, so yesterday we talked about news anchors and not taking them too seriously in chapter 16 called Chauffeur Knowledge. Today we're up to chapter 17. You control less than you think. That doesn't sound very positive at all. Illusion of control. Who's ready for some reading? Here we go. Every day, shortly before 9 o'clock, a man with a red hat stands in a square and begins to wave his cap around wildly. After 5 minutes, he disappears. One day, a policeman comes up to him and asks, "What are you doing?" "I'm keeping the giraffes away." "But there aren't any giraffes here." "Well, I must be doing a good job then." That is such a funny little story. A friend with a broken leg was stuck in bed, and asked me to pick up a lottery ticket for him. I went to the store, checked a few boxes, wrote his name on it, and paid. As I handed him the copy of the ticket, he balked. "Why did you fill it out?" "I wanted to do that. I'm never going to win anything with your numbers." "Do you really think it affects the draw if you pick the numbers?" I inquired. He looked at me blankly. Obviously he did. In casinos, most people throw the dice as hard as they can if they need a high number, and as gingerly as possible if they're hoping for a low number, which is as nonsensical as football fans thinking they can swing a game by gesticulating in front of the TV. Go, come on, run faster, run faster. Unfortunately, they share this illusion with many people who also seek to influence the world by sending out the right thoughts, vibrations, positive energy, karma, whatever you'd like to call it, I suppose. The illusion of control is the tendency to believe that we can influence something over which we have absolutely no sway. This was discovered in 1965 by two researchers, Jenkins and Ward. Their experiment was simple, consisting of just two switches and a light. The men were able to adjust when the switch is connected to the light and when not. Even when the light flashed on and off at random, subjects were still convinced that they could influence it by flicking the switches. There is a very interesting experiment that was done by Darren Brown. If you've heard of Darren Brown, amazing magician and mentalist, and he does these really amazing specials. And one of them was called Trick or Treat. And at the very end, he brought everybody together into a room and told them that they needed to get a certain number up on the screen, and the number would go up seemingly based on what the people in the room were doing, but it went up at random. I won't spoil it. If I get comments and people ask about it, then I will share that link to that video, which is on YouTube, or hopefully it still is. It is a really amazing experiment. And thank you for the flowers on Bigo Live, by the way, because we are also live. So I'll share that if people ask for it. I will share that link to that extremely interesting experiment. We'll talk about more of this a little later. Let's continue reading first. Or consider this example. An American researcher has been investigating acoustic sensitivity to pain. For this, he placed people in sound booths and increased the volume until the subjects signaled him to stop. The two rooms, A and B, were identical, save one thing. Room B had a red panic button on the wall. The button was purely for show, but it gave participants the feeling they were in control of the situation, leading them to withstand significantly more noise. If you have read Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Primo Levi or Viktor Frankl. I'm not sure how I pronounce that first one. This finding will not surprise you. The idea that people can influence their destiny even by a fraction encourages these prisoners not to give up hope. Crossing the street in Los Angeles is a tricky business, but luckily at the press of a button we can stop traffic. Or can we? The button's real purpose is to make us believe we have an influence on the traffic lights, and thus we're better able to endure the wait for the signal to change with more patience. The same goes for door open and door close button in elevators. Many are not even connected to the electrical panel. Such tricks are also designed into open plan offices. For some people, it will be too hot. For others, too cold. Clever technicians create the illusion of control by installing fake temperature dials. This reduces energy bills and complaints. Such ploys are called placebo buttons, and they are being pushed in all sorts of realms. Central bankers and government officials employ placebo buttons masterfully. Take, for instance, the federal funds rate, which is an extremely short-term rate. Oh, yeah. An overnight rate, to be precise. While this rate doesn't affect long-term interest rates, which are a function of supply and demand and an important factor in investment decisions, the stock market nevertheless reacts frenetically to its every change. Nobody understands why overnight interest rates can have such an effect on the market, but everybody thinks they do, and so they do. The same goes for pronouncements made by the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Markets move, even though these statements inject little of tangible value into the real economy. They are merely sound waves, and still we allow economic heads to continue to play with the illusionary dials. It would be a real wake-up call if all involved realized the truth, that the world economy is a fundamentally uncontrollable system. Well, I think we can all agree that currently it is definitely being controlled. With regards to lockdowns and different things happening, it is very much impacting the world economy with people not able to open their businesses. But this is all open to debate. This is a very interesting chapter because I'll give you an example from this morning. Somebody that I know broke a mirror this morning, and they were very concerned about having broken this mirror and whether they should throw salt over their shoulder and do different things. And a lot of these superstitions come from a long time ago. And we hold on to these superstitions and we wonder what we can do to prevent these things that many years ago we didn't understand. So if we broke a mirror and something happened, we thought that there was something that was going on. On Friday the 13th, the Templar Knights were practically exterminated by the Catholic Church. And so Friday the 13th became an unlucky day. So even though this happened so many years ago, and it was only a one-off event where it was unlucky for a certain group of people, people saw that and thought that it meant that Friday the 13th was unlucky. So there is, to a degree, that we create ideas in our mind that are going to make it seem like things are happening in a certain way. We might click our fingers and we'll think that certain things have happened because we've clicked our fingers, even though that might not be the case. However, there are also things that we don't understand now, just like there are things that we understand now about 300, 400, 500 years ago that we didn't understand at that time, that we understand now, that we don't understand currently, that we might be able to find out about in 400 years' time. In 400 years' time, they'll look at us and say, how come they didn't understand that they did have control over certain things? Because now we know X, Y, and Z. So I think that the most important thing to take from this chapter is that if you believe you have certain control over something, then use that to your advantage. If you think that you don't have control, use that to your advantage. Whatever you believe in this case will serve you. So don't be hung up by the fact that you have to have certain things in a certain way. So if somebody fills in the lottery ticket for you, maybe you can think to yourself, because they filled it in for me, it's going to be a winner. And who knows, it might be the case or not. Even though lotteries, we don't have a lot of sway or influence over that. But when it comes to other things, we might. And you, do you have everything under control? Probably less than you think, or maybe not. I think it's open to debate. Do you think you're command of your way through life like a Roman emperor? Rather, you are the man with the red hat. Therefore, focus on the few things of importance that you can really influence. For everything else, que sera, sera, what will be, will be. So this one's a very interesting chapter. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments on that one. I love Lanen's comment here. Stop paying a mortgage and see how much. Oh, I have to open it back up. It just disappeared. Stop paying a mortgage and see how much the title of the house gives you a control to keep your house. Who is the real owner of your house? That is a very, very true statement, that one. So yes, let go of the things that you can't really control and see what it is that you can control. And some of the things that I think Ralph mentions that he says that we're not in control of, we might be in control of, because there was actually some new psychological research and neurological research into how the brain works that shows that we do actually influence our environment around us using our brain. And particles do actually change based on what we are thinking. So there are certain things that we have some control over. But obviously, in the case of the mortgage, we have no control whatsoever based on how the laws are written and who is the actual owner of your house. So that is a very, very true statement. Okay, so that was a very in-depth, very big, very interesting, very, how should we put it? Contentious, chapter 17. Tomorrow we are reading chapter 18. Never pay your lawyer by the hour. That sounds about right to me. Incentive super response tendency. This one is also very interesting because, yes, incentives can work or they can work against us. And very often we think that the incentives are going to work in our favors. So that is for tomorrow, though. I'm looking forward to reading that one for you. This has been Menno reading The Art of Thinking Clearly with some commentary and ideas. I love your comments and your thoughts. So feel free to, even if you're watching the replay on YouTube, leave a comment. If you're watching on Bigo, we're here every morning at 8 a.m. Sydney time. You can look up what time that is in your time zone. And yes, feel free to also comment. I'll see if I can do my best to actually see it, because usually I'm looking at the page. And you can also watch on Zoom. We'll start putting that out into social media that you can watch live as well, so that we can have more comments and discussion on the topic, because at the moment it's mainly just my commentary. And we have Superfan Laden, who's also leaving some very interesting comments. But for now, have an amazing day. I'm looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow. And remember to stay curious and stay a little bit critical.